In the 1960s, Robert Conrad was everywhere. He was James West in the Wild Wild West, the tough secret agent who did his own stunts, punched villains in the face, and walked away without a scratch. Women adored him. Men wanted to be him. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? He vanished from the spotlight, moved to a remote mountain ranch, and died in silence, with no TV, no radio, not even a phone. When his family opened the doors to his home, what they found shocked them: untouched belongings, faded scripts, and a $10 million fortune, just sitting there. This isn't the Robert Conrad you remember. Stay with us, because the truth is far more gripping than fiction. Do you remember sitting around the TV on Friday nights in the 1960s? When there were only 3 channels to choose from and everyone watched the same show? If you were there, you would be 70, 80 years old now. And I appreciate that. He's James West in the Wild Wild West. Not just another cowboy, but a secret agent with charm and fists like rocks. He doesn't pretend to be tough, he's really tough. He does his own stunts without a stunt double, takes real punches, and stands tall with confidence. Maybe you remember watching with your dad, who admired that grit. Or maybe you were one of the many who had a crush on him: those eyes, that jawline, the way he walked into a scene like he owned it. Robert was everywhere, on TV guide covers, on the radio, in action-packed series like Ba Ba Black Sheep. He starred, this time as a fighter pilot in World War II. He even launched a successful radio show later in life, where older fans would call just to hear his voice again. Women admired him, not just for his looks, but for his confidence. Men admired him. He was the kind of guy who fixed his own car, stood up for what he believed in, and didn't flinch under pressure. But what made him special wasn't just his reputation. It was the gleam in his eyes, the quiet defiance, the sense that he came from a tough place, and had to fight for everything he had. To the world, he was a movie hero. But to those who were paying attention, Robert Conrad was something rarer. He was real. And maybe that's why, even decades later, we still talk about him. Robert Conrad didn't come from privilege. He was born in 1935, on the south side of Chicago, a tough place to grow up, especially during the Depression. His parents were just teenagers when he came into the world, and they didn't stay together long. His mother, Jacqueline, raised him on her own for most of his early life. She was a publicist, smart and driven. She believed the world owed you nothing, you had to fight for every inch. And she made sure Robert understood that. Robert was a street kid. Played football, worked odd jobs, got into a few scraps. At just 15, he tried to join the Marines by lying about his age. They found out and sent him home, but that spirit, that drive to prove himself, never went away. He fell in love young, with Joan Kenley, a girl from a well-off family. Her parents didn't approve. But that didn't stop them. Robert and Joan ran off and got married when he was just 17. He didn't even have a steady job, so he made one. He worked as a milkman, a factory hand, even sang in nightclubs. They had 5 kids together. Life wasn't easy, but it was full. Years later, Robert met a young beauty queen named Lavelda, 25 years his junior. They married in 1983 and moved to a small mountain town called Bear Valley. No glitz. No paparazzi. Just a quiet life and 3 more daughters. In total, he raised 8 children. And from everything we know, he was strict but loving. The kind of father who taught his sons to sew, and took his daughters to the gym. A man who believed in hard work, discipline, and family above all else. And despite 2 divorces, his children spoke highly of him, not just as a star, but as a dad. One of his sons once said, "I was raised on the set of Wild Wild West, and it was the best kind of childhood you could ask for." Robert Conrad didn't stumble into Hollywood, he fought his way in. In the 1950s, he was just another young father, working odd jobs to make ends meet. He sang in cafes, worked construction, and delivered milk at dawn. But he had something, presence. That quiet intensity that made people look twice. His big break came when a friend introduced him to Warner Brothers. They saw what everyone would later see, a leading man. Soon after, he landed the role of Tom Lapaka in Hawaiian Eye, a detective show that ran for 4 years. That was his foot in the door. But it was the Wild Wild West that made him a star. The show was part Western, part James Bond, completely unique. And Conrad, as James T. West, was electric. Fast talking, fast fighting, and always in control. He did every fight scene, every stunt, often getting bruised, bloodied, and sometimes nearly broken. Viewers loved him for it. So did critics. For a while, Robert Conrad was one of the most bankable stars on television. His name meant action, danger, and excitement. He later took on roles like World War II hero Pappy Boyington in Ba Ba Black Sheep, earning respect not just as a performer, but as someone who brought real-life grit to his roles. But with success came a price. His tough guy image stuck, so much so that it became hard for casting directors, and even audiences, to see him as anything else. Still, he kept working. In the 1980s and beyond, he acted, directed, and produced. And when the roles slowed down, he didn't chase them. Instead, he started a radio show, The PM Show with Robert Conrad, where he talked directly with fans. No scripts. No spotlight. Just his voice. For nearly 60 years, Robert Conrad stayed true to who he was, a performer who gave everything, a worker who never coasted, and a man who earned every minute of fame he had. For someone who seemed invincible on screen, Robert Conrad's real-life struggles were deeply human. In 2003, at the age of 73, Robert was involved in a serious car crash in California. He was driving alone when his Jaguar crossed the center line and collided head-on with another vehicle. The impact was brutal. He survived, but barely. The test results showed his blood alcohol level was nearly 3 times the legal limit. For fans who grew up seeing him as a symbol of discipline and strength, the news was heartbreaking. The crash left Robert with severe injuries, partial paralysis, loss of mobility, chronic pain, and neurological damage. He had trouble speaking. His memory faded. He was no longer the man who once jumped off rooftops and walked away without a scratch. But perhaps even more painful than the physical scars was what came after. Public appearances stopped. Auditions stopped. Even friendships, it seems, faded. Robert slipped into a quiet kind of isolation. His marriage eventually ended. His world got smaller. He moved permanently to Bear Valley, the remote mountain town where he once found peace. No TV. No phone. Just the sound of wind through the trees, and the memories of a life once lived at full speed. And yet, despite all the hardship, he never asked for pity. He once said, "If I've got to go out, I'll go out with my boots on." Until the very end, he stayed tough. Quiet. Proud. He passed away on February 8, 2020, from heart failure. He was 84. Surrounded by family. Far from the cameras. Far from the lights. A giant of television, who spent his final years as just a man. Alone, but not forgotten. If Robert Conrad was part of your story, we'd love to hear it. Share your memories in the comments below. After Robert's death, people began asking, what happened to everything he left behind? Not just his legacy on film, but the real, tangible parts of his life. His homes. His belongings. His fortune. For most of his final years, Robert lived in Bear Valley, California. A quiet mountain town with barely a few hundred residents. There, on a 100-acre ranch tucked deep in the woods, he built his own kind of sanctuary. No phone. No television. No radio. Just trees, wildlife, and silence. The kind of place where no one asked for autographs. After his passing, the property sat untouched. Nature began to take over. Weeds climbed the walls. Dust settled on the furniture. Old photographs, movie scripts, and family keepsakes were still there, frozen in time. To anyone else, it might look abandoned. But for those who knew him, it was sacred ground. The last place he truly felt at peace. Robert also had a home in Malibu, a more traditional property with a view of the Pacific. But even there, he kept things simple. He didn't live like a Hollywood millionaire, even though, by the time of his death, he had a net worth estimated around $10 million. Most of that fortune went to his children, 8 in total. But for a man who once had it all, the way he left this world was quiet. Private. Almost like he never wanted anyone to make a fuss. And maybe that's the most Robert Conrad thing of all. He didn't leave behind mansions filled with gold. He left behind stories. and strength. And memories that still echo in the halls of the homes he once called his own. The home may have fallen silent, but Robert Conrad's legacy still speaks. He showed us that toughness isn't loud. It's steady. Quiet. Earned. He wasn't perfect, but he was real. A man who worked hard, took his hits, and kept showing up, for his craft, his family, and his values. And maybe that's what we remember most, not the fame, not the action, but the dignity he carried through it all. If Robert Conrad was a part of your life, share a memory in the comments. Tell us where you were when the Wild Wild West aired. Or what his strength meant to you in your own life. And if this story touched you, consider subscribing. We're here to honor voices like his, the ones time may forget, but our hearts never do.